um, and how, I mean, in internet years, times is passing fast, if you want, and maybe we've already proven the point or made visible what was to make visible, and but still, I mean, it's undeniable that it's fun to run a space, and that there's a need for these. I mean, even though there are many unofficial cinemas in Berlin, I think there's a need for a space that is that explicit about its approach to both cinema and the intellectual property environment that cinema operates in. So, in a way, it should continue. There's also now someone talked to me in Berlin shortly before I left to make to think about pirate cinema, the book. So there's written a lot during pirate cinema, or the texts that have been published that would actually announce the screening. So there could be a book, for example, and there can also be, and that's something Jan and me, who've been running pirate cinema, we've been involved in quite a lot, is actually production of archives. So starting with pirate cinema, we have written some software, actually in the beginning just for our own pleasure and for ourselves as the main users to access the films that we had archived, our own archive, to make them fully searchable, have full text search through dialogues in the film, make them visualize films in certain ways, make preview scenes accessible, etc., etc., etc. That then later became the 0xDB, and now we've been in Bombay working on a video archive again that allows you even a bit more of annotation and layered information on top of actual video, and then also, just as the 0xDB tries to develop tools, but also like a vocabulary, or like a set of small bits and formulas how you would make video accessible online, if your very first thought would not always be, as it is, copyright, what if this, what if that. That's of course also, and we've been working over time with people who actually run BitTorrent trackers, who are actually directly involved in distributions of movies, people who run the Pirate Bay, other trackers, smaller trackers. We've gotten to know a lot of people, and there's of course a lot of discussion always how to maintain and how to develop the infrastructure that is there, and I think that's also an extremely interesting thing to be engaged in, development of peer-to-peer technology, protocols, tracker software, etc., archiving software, etc., etc. But yes, I mean, pirate cinema should, I mean, it's not just gonna end. It's definitely not just gonna end, but it always takes a while to restart it. This script is the only script that is running its own website, and it's quite dense and complicated and short. I mean, it fits on a page. It's a short thing. I think in the end, without giving too much away, you can. I mean, there's, for example, one image. There's an image of a clock, and when you run the script on that image, you will always get the correct time. So one of the ideas is, in transforming images in this kind of steganographic approach to, like, okay, what's the image and how do we get information out of it, that you do not only, I mean, the standard approach would be static information in the image. Like, in some strange way, something is encoded that with a very complex algorithm that is here can be transformed. But it becomes a lot more interesting when your algorithm is not necessarily so complex, but actually treats the image as algorithm. Doesn't treat it as text, but actually executes stuff that is inside the image. You can argue, and it's true, that this is a security issue, and my script tried the best to actually not just execute, like, you can't find a malicious image that will now act as a virus or something, but in the end, that's probably how you, or that's what I thought how you'd rather do it. That you don't, because also many of these images are are much smaller than the actual text. So you have to have some generative thing inside the image that is not actually content but code again, and that kind of unzips the, if you want, that kind of unfolds the thing that you want to know. But I would always argue that these images are, of course, works in themselves, and just the fact that my intellectual property, when passed through an algorithm, collides with someone else's intellectual property is, I mean, that's the United States, it's a law, Luxembourg's law, that for every digital piece of IP protected content, there are two others whose exact binary difference will be that work. I mean, digital work is a large number. Let's say, to make it simpler, work A is whatever. There's a film that just come out that in digital form is number 42, and now I write 2 short essays that have in digital form 19 and 23. I just add my 2 essays and I get the file of the movie. It's extremely unlikely to do it with the large numbers that actually constitute these files, but it's entirely possible. I mean, there's an unlimited number of combinations of photos I take or films I make or texts I write or whatever that will combined result in exactly an exact bit by bit copy of popular film that's running now. And that lies in the nature of information. It's also a DB, obviously, and it should have a short name. 0x, different theories. There's the theory that it's, I mean, if you write a hexadecimal number, then 0x denotes the hexadecimal, so 0xdb is actually the number 219, whatever you make out of it. But then also other people have observed that the 0 and the x is actually the skull and bones of pirate cinema, so that may be another explanation. Who knows? All the other millions of films that I could have downloaded that day, I didn't download. So it's kind of that type of decision that I look at lists of films and think, what looks interesting, what do I want to watch, or what do I want to archive, and then we do. So it's very idiosyncratic as a criterion. Like, it's just films that we thought might be interesting. And I'm probably also the least likely person to say something very profound about my own criteria of selecting film, because obviously I must have a blind spot, because if I hadn't, I would just download everything or nothing or something. So I don't know. It's obvious, I mean, to the point I can say, like, it's obviously centered on Western cinemas, or because of availability and because I don't speak Chinese or Hindi, maybe, but mainly because of availability. Most of the stuff is European, North American, but most of it is rather non-mainstream. But it's really it's hard to say. I've always found it quite hard to. I mean, these criteria are not defined. If they were defined, I could replace myself with a script and have a lot more free time. Maybe I don't know. It's about doing things across. It's the OXDB, just as or Pirate Cinema and its program, just as Text.com, is very much about creating proximity, making connections between works that are normally miles apart. Also leaving out things that are normally obvious, or adding things that are normally non-obvious. Mainly, I would say it's in drawing or painting. It's mostly like a sketch. It was mostly to try out what was possible with the Google Maps API, and the location information that we automatically retrieve for OXDB.com, OXDB.org, is the shooting locations, which is, even though it's interesting information, it's not the most. It's not like the core of the thing that finally you get all the shooting locations on a Google map. What we've been doing in Bombay the last 2 months is maybe a bit more interesting, because we've extended. I mean, the video archive we've been working on there, Pad.ma, is in a way an extension of a couple of the concepts of of the OXDB, and the whole map part is a bit more more useful probably in this case, because dozens of people have annotated video over the last 2-3 months there and have actually mapped videos, references to locations both in the image where things were shot, locations mentioned, locations that are mentioned, depicted locations, fictitious locations on the map, and so that you can basically now browse the whole video archive of hundreds of videos on an actual map and see again, like, things that are suddenly close to each other just because they are close to each other in space. So you're actually able to make connections that otherwise would have been hard to make, because you don't really can just guess the physical proximity of two locations. And now obviously the next task for the OXDB would be to at least parse all the dialogue that is in the OXDB database for locations and try to get a map that is a bit richer than the one that we have so far.